Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So in this video, we'll be taking up the newspaper for 9th of February 2023. So there was an earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and the death toll nears to around 12,000 people. So they've lost their lives. There was an earthquake of the magnitude 7.8 on the Richter scale. And apart from that, Turkish Red Crescent's chiefs, they are also like providing the relief aid. And India has also sent its relief team there with food aid and likewise. Then RBI lift the loan cost to tame the inflation. So here the banking system now it is much stronger, and it is to be affected by one case, which is that the governor of RBI, he believes monetary policy committee, it raises the Q1 financial year 2024's growth forecast to 7.8%. And so 25 basis point rate increase by RBI. So recently in its latest monetary policy committee meeting, the MPC, it has raised the repo rate by 25 basis points, which is 0.25 percentage. And in this graph, we can understand the RBI's repo rate and the weighted average lending rates of all the commercial banks on the outstanding rupee loans. So whenever the repo rate increases, it is obvious that the cost of borrowing would also increase, because the interest rates which are imposed or which are used by banks whenever they lend some money or whenever they give some loan, that also increases, because repo rate is the rate of interest at which all the commercial banks they borrow from the RBI. So when their cost of borrowing increases, so obviously the interest rate at which they lend the loans, that also increases. So here now the repo rate, it stands at 6.5 percentage after the increase of 25 basis points. And apart from that, the weighted average lending rates of the scheduled commercial banks is now at 9.52%. And the RBI governor says that the MPC, it was of the view that further calibrated monetary policy action is warranted to keep the inflation expectations anchored. So obviously right now, the central bank or the monetary policy committee is targeting the inflation rate, and says that there is break of to break the persistence of the core inflation, because it is still at a higher end, and strengthen the medium term growth forecast and prospects once the core inflation slows down and it comes in a comfortable territory. Apart from that, MPC, it lowered its CPI inflation forecast for the current fiscal year to 6.5 percentage from the 6.7 percentage it projected in the last meeting. And so this is, we can say, a positive forecast that MPC is expecting that in future the CPI inflation is going to cool down. So it might be possible that it would not be increasing the repo rate at an aggressive rate in future. Then Supreme Court says that Constitution does not give aldermen right to vote, and it does not allow nominated members of a municipality the right to vote in meetings. And the Supreme Court said this while hearing a plea on the alleged stalling of the MCD mayoral polls. So, despite the successful elections of MCD Delhi, we are still seeing that mayor has not been elected. So, Animal Welfare Board of India says that we should celebrate February 14 as a cow hug day, and it says that hugging the cows will bring emotional richness and increase the happiness. So it decreased the dazzle of the Western civilization, pushing the Vedic traditions to the verge of extinction. So basically, a kind of step to revive our Vedic traditions and the cultural practices. So here, what becomes important for us is to know about the structure of the Animal Welfare Board of India. So again, regarding electing a mayor in Delhi, the Supreme Court is saying that Constitution is not allowing the aldermen the right to vote, and it issues notice to the LG and the MCD pro tem presiding officer. So the difference is very substantial between you, that is elected members, and the nominated members. And the case would be heard in a detailed manner on February 13th. So as of now, that is the only development regarding this issue. So key trials for the Gaganyaan mission is being conducted, and you can see in this picture how the key trials they are being conducted. Apart from that, Gaganyaan is a human space flight mission, and the initial recovery trials of the crew module they were conducted in the Navy's water survival test facility, which is there in Kochi. Coming to the editorial page, so there was an issue regarding judges, like a lawyer's name being recommended by the Supreme Court Collegium for an elevation as a judge of the Madras High Court, but later petition was filed against her alleging that she is involved in hate speech regarding the minorities. So this whole article is based upon that issue. So it is like saying that while the order was dismissing the challenge to her appointment was given, the case also points to the flaw with the present structure of the judicial appointments process, one that benefits the executive. So that is there, and so there is problem of opacity when we talk about the collegium system, because obviously it includes the Chief Justice of India and the four senior most judges of the Supreme Court, so only they are involved in this process. And even the government, or you might be knowing about the tussle going on between the executive and the judiciary regarding the appointments of the judges. So the government feels that the government should also have a representation in this whole process, and the Supreme Court does not want that because they feel that there would be political interference in that, and they feel that collegium is the best way ahead. But there can be some reforms in terms of increasing the transparency of the collegium system. So the functioning of the collegium, it can be contrasted with judicial appointments in other democratic countries such as United States, South Africa, and Kenya. While the specific processes they are different, but they're all open. So they are more transparent compared to the process that is there in India. And by contrast, in India, the candidate's name it is effectively made public after their selection by the collegium. So here, the author is in a way trying to explain how the process is opaque in nature in India, and the selection process is behind closed doors, where the parties involved, they are the collegium system, the collegium, as I told you, and the government through intelligence bureau. So this not only has transparency cost, but also the costs are asymmetrical, because it is but obvious that where the government approves of a particular candidate, it can simply withhold relevant information from the collegium also. So this is one thing that is there in case of the system in India. And once a collegium recommendation has been made, the only way of contesting it is through a legal challenge. However, the challenge must be before the Supreme Court itself, so leading to a set of awkward situations. The decision of the collegium, it must be challenged before their own junior colleagues and the CGI, who is himself the head of the collegium. And while technically, in recommending a name, the collegium acts as an administrative body, and all administrative decisions, they're open to judicial review and practice. One can immediately see the problem with judges being asked to sit in the judgment or their own senior colleagues. So that is, we can say, one dichotomy or kind of an irony in this whole process when it comes to contesting the name of a recommended person. And when we consider the case of South Africa, where proceedings of the Judicial Appointments Commission, they have been subjected to judicial review, and where the courts, they have directed the commission to make their deliberations public. So this is not to suggest that South African appointments process is perfect, but what does exist is a system of checks and balances, at the heart of which are the values of transparency and publicity. So this is very important, and this definitely should be a part of the Indian process also, where the collegium system, as of now, it is opaque in nature. So it needs to be made much more transparent, and how it can be made transparent has been talked about in this article. So the root of the problem, the judicial order dismissing the challenge to Victoria Gori's appointment, was the chronicle of a failure foretold. So when the collegium's recommendation was in, it was obvious that for the reasons explained above that we just discussed, there would be no going back, regardless of the desires and motivations of the individual actors involved. So here, like yesterday, in yesterday's newspaper, we saw that Supreme Court's bench, it has refused to recommend or a kind of direct the collegium system or the Chief Justice of India to reconsider the appointment of this person as a judge in the Madras High Court. So that is being talked about in this part, and the present structure is problematic both in principle but also because it is asymmetrically, it benefits the political executive, and the current case, it is a stark example of this asymmetry. So the problem does not begin or end with this appointment. What we need is an appointment process that genuinely safeguards the judicial independence from the executive dominance. Then again, this article is talking about green transition, or where we talk about transition towards a green and a clean energy. So here it is basically talking about the connect between India and the Nordic countries. So over the last decades, the Nordic countries, they have been pioneering green technologies. So India can definitely learn from their experiences and from their expertise. So together, the Nordics and the India, they can power the green transition the world needs. So the thought of the Nordic countries might evoke different things to an Indian. And so the forefront is developing new green technologies and solutions such as hydrogen. We have National Green Hydrogen Mission also, then offshore wind, batteries, lithium-ion batteries, then we have carbon capture and storage. So solutions that are essential for the world to succeed in the green transition it desperately needs. So India can basically coordinate and connect with these Nordic countries. And these countries, they have succeeded in building a stable, secure, welfare-based societies that to a large extent and manage to meet the needs and the wishes of their inhabitants. So connecting with India at the Nordic India Summit, which was held in Copenhagen in May 2022, the 5 Nordic prime ministers and the Indian prime minister agreed to intensify the cooperation on digitalization, renewable energy, maritime industries, and the circular economy. So you can like find out which all countries are part of the Nordic world and the Nordic group. So Norway is there, Finland is there. So trade links that can grow with this partnership, even there we have potential. So there can be a significant rise in trade and investments between Finland and India, and we are also seeing that happening. And India has grown to become a priority country for the Finland also. And apart from that, several Indian companies are also looking towards Finland for its expertise in areas of technology, innovation, sustainability, digitalization, carbon neutrality, and much more. So increasing number of Indian students, researchers, and experts, they have been moving to Finland as well. And trade between India and Norway, that has also doubled in the last 3 years. And the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund, it is likely to become one of the India's largest single foreign investors to the tune of around $17.6 billion. And the Norwegian government, they've also established a new climate investment fund for the investments in renewables abroad. And India has been defined as a focus country. So both Norway and Finland, they have ongoing free trade agreement and investments negotiations with India. And so like there is growing cooperation between these two countries with India. So there is a great deal of complementarities in our trade relations as our exchange in goods is of different nature. In addition, trade in the services is an area of significant potential where we can work in future, and especially in case of tourism, education, IT, energy, maritime, and financial services. So this is, we can say, the missing area where we still have the potential of working together with these countries. So as India takes rapid strides into a green, digital, and innovative future, Nordic countries such as Finland and Norway, they stand ready to share their experiences, their expertise, and be a part of India's transition. Definitely, India should leverage this opportunity, and we are like significantly smaller than India's population wise, and they're located on the other side of the globe. So we like do have world leading technology and expertise to offer. So technologies and innovations that are successful, that are scaled up in India, they can easily be transferred to other parts of the world also. So together, the Nordics and India can be the powerhouse of green transition globally. So that they can like set a perfect example in terms of green transition at the global level. So our domestic air traffic is increasing in January, and increase in estimated coal production due to high demand. So we've been talking about transition towards green energy. So at the same time, we also say that energy security is an important component during this process of transition towards green energy. So we are seeing that right now we are highly dependent upon coal, and we are seeing that coal production is increasing because of our high power demand. And people in India are at high risk of flooding from the glacial lakes. So here the glacial outburst lake disasters, they are important. You need to understand about the glacial lakes and about the past incidents. So glacial lake outburst floods, we are very prone to that. And government, it has recognized startups eligible to avail the fiscal incentives. So an initiative to promote more startups in India, and definitely India is one of the startup capitals of the world. So talking about disinvestment, so the status and about its proceeds. So firstly, we see that through this graph, the budget estimates against the actual realization of the proceeds. So the blue color is for the budget estimates and the red one is for the actual proceeds that have been received by the government out of disinvestment. So you can see during 2020-21, because of the COVID-19, that can be one of the possible reasons why our actual proceeds were so low. So always we can see, except 2 years, that 2017-18 and 2018-19, our actual proceeds have been lower than the budget estimates. And from few years, our actual estimates have been gradually declining. You can see that they are falling. And disinvestment proceeds of 2022-23 so far. So the highest are from the LIC's IPO, initial public offering. So LIC was listed on the stock market. So highest one from LIC, then we have it from others, followed by ONGC and IRCTC. So having a look at the gist of this article, so this current budget, in this current budget, the government has set a disinvestment target of around rupees 51,000 crores, which was down nearly by 21% from the budget estimate of the current year. And disinvestment or divestment also, it is when the government is selling its assets or a subsidiary, such as a central or the state public sector enterprises. So minority disinvestment, majority disinvestment, and the complete privatization, they are the three main approaches to disinvestment. And there is a strategic disinvestment also, which is also the majority disinvestment, wherein the government gives up it control over the management also. So center, it is not going to add new companies to the list of CPSEs to be divested in the current financial year. And the aspirational divestments of the two public sector banks and one general insurance firm, which were announced in the budget 2 years ago, they will also not be a part of the plan. So there is the Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, that what is DIPAM, which is there for this disinvestment exercise, which is under the Union Finance Ministry. And we have understood that what do we mean by disinvestment. So is there a change in the German policy towards Russia? So obviously there might be some change because of the Russia-Ukraine war going on. So what led Germany to change its stance of diplomacy and dialogue towards Russia to a more assertive one? And does the trade of energy between the two countries factor in their political relationship? So after months of political debates in the German government, it announced that it would send Leopard 2 main battle tanks to Ukraine. So these are German tanks, and which has been sent to Ukraine. And the decision marks Germany's shift from its policy of Ostpolitik, which was an approach followed in an effort to bridge the Berlin's divisions and bring changes through trade. But now we are seeing a change in this policy, which is called the Ostpolitik in German language. So how did Germany's policy towards Russia evolve in the 20th century? So this is basically a kind of tracing the whole relationship between Germany and Russia. So the relation between the two countries has always been critical to the European security and prosperity. And so soon after the Bolshevik Revolution and the Germany's defeat in the First World War, the Soviet Union and the newly born German Republic, they signed the Treaty of Rapallo, which was establishing diplomatic relations. And in 1939, as war clouds were hovering around Europe, so that was basically during the Second World War. So Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, they signed a non-aggression agreement, which eventually collapsed in 1941 when the Hitler invaded the later, that is it invaded Russia. And after the Second World War, Germany was divided between Soviet backed East Germany and there was US backed West Germany. So, gradually in 1971, we see with the adoption of Ostpolitik by the West German Chancellor, there was significant economic interaction which began between the two sides. So, as a result of this policy, Germany had signed an agreement and it started importing Russian natural gas for the first time. So, it was a widely shared belief that economic interdependence could foster better political ties between the two countries. So, talking about the relationship during the post-Cold War period, so in the post-Soviet world, a unified Germany, it doubled down on its efforts to promote ties with Russia, and the efforts were there to promote their political ties through energy trade, which continued even as Vladimir Putin and the German counterpart, they rose to leadership in Russia and Germany respectively. So the Nord Stream 1, it is a gas pipeline which transports gas directly from Russia to Germany. And it was a result of these changing equations. And the energy relationship went hand in hand with the political relationship. So, regardless of Russia's actions in Georgia in 2008 and Crimea in 2014, the German political establishment they continued enhancing Germany's energy reliance on Russia. But these were definitely majorly impacted during the Russia-Ukraine war. And how has this Russia-Ukraine war, it has impacted Germany's foreign policy. So now we are seeing what is the latest or the current shift in Germany's foreign policy towards Russia. So we see that Russia, it invaded Ukraine on 24th February 2022. So soon this war is going to complete 1 year and Germany's policy, it underwent a fundamental shift because of this. So the German Chancellor, declared the war as a turning point, and since then Germany's policy, it has moved away from an emphasis on dialogue and diplomacy to a more assertive stance, culminating in the decision to send Leopard 2 battle tanks to Ukraine. And in the initial phases of the war, Berlin had believed that a diplomatic solution was possible to bring an end to this conflict. However, as the war progressed and time went by, Germany it amended several of its previous policies that shaped its orientation towards Russia. So the most strengthened relationship that Russia and Germany shared. Now, obviously, that has been impacted because of the Russia-Ukraine war, and we can see how changes they have evolved over a period of time during different interwar periods. And so, what has been Germany's response since the war? So, one of the key factors driving this change in the policy is Germany's recognition of the need to reduce its dependence on the Russian energy. Because obviously, when you're dependent upon another country for meeting your domestic needs, be it for energy or any good, or in the pharma sector, that is obviously very, we can say, very dangerous, and it can be risky in times of war, which is obviously Germany learned this lesson through this war. So soon after Mr. Putin, he recognized Ukraine's Donetsk and Luhansk provinces as independent republics. So Germany installed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which was ready for operation. So Germany is kind of way blocking it, and obviously Europe has been impacted because of this war on a major scale, and subsequently it announced the construction of 4 floating terminals and 2 permanent onshore sites for the enhanced LNG imports, struck an energy deal with Qatar. So now Germany is looking at other countries for importing gas, and that includes Qatar, and it like supported numerous rounds of European Union sanctions against the Russian entities. There was a Russian price cap which was imposed upon the Russian crude oil. So Germany also worked with other European capitals to assure swiftly delivery of the arms and aid to Ukraine. So it is aiding Ukraine in terms of arms and ammunition, and Germany's gradual shift towards a more robust policy towards Russia is a testament to the changing realities of Europe's security landscape. So India is developing border connectivity due to Chinese concerns. Our external affairs ministry says that work began last month on the strategically important 135-kilometer long Chushul Dungti and Fukshe Demchuk road in the Ladakh region. So as far as the infrastructural development is concerned, India is definitely going ahead with its proposed projects in the border regions. So India's connectivity projects with Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Myanmar, they have been accelerated due to its obvious concerns about the frontier with China. And so he says that there are a number of infrastructure projects along the line of actual control and the border connectivity efforts with the friendly neighbors, including all nations which share a land border with India except Pakistan, are going on ahead. And apart from that, so you should be knowing about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So India would be hosting the summit this year. So you can find out about the members of it and about its headquarters. So here we just have the political news, which is not important for us. So Arogya Setu app contact tracing data has been deleted. This says the IT ministry. Its contact tracing data has been deleted. And that has been in accordance with the provisions of the Arogya Setu Data Access and Knowledge Sharing Protocol 2020. The contact tracing feature of the Arogya Setu app mobile application has been discontinued and contact tracing data collected through it has been deleted. So this app was launched during COVID-19 pandemic. So this is what IT ministry says, that this data has been deleted. So surface to air missile, DRDO is working to fix a few glitches regarding the quick reaction surface to air missile, which is QRSAM, and it is being developed by DRDO. So this is set to be tested again in April with some changes. So that is there regarding this missile system. And this missile is designed to operate on the move with search and track capability and fire on a short halt. And 6,700 URLs have been blocked in 2022, and the panel met 53 times. So this is regarding several posts on the social medias that were critical of its handling of the pandemic. So these were blocked by the government under the Information Technology Procedure and Safeguards for Blocking for Access of the Information for the Public Rules 2009. You can find out more about these rules by Googling and find out what are different rules under this thing. And so Fiji, it even hopes to partner with India in meeting its climate action goals. So you need to locate where is Fiji located and its surrounding geography, and obviously you need to find out and spot Fiji in the atlas. So government of Fiji, it will see closer relations with democracies, including India, who is on a 5-day, so their prime minister is on a 5-day visit to India. And India is hosting the there's an India Energy Week going on right now. So we've been talking about transition towards clean energy and different important things related to that. So we are seeing the impacts of climate change in hill stations. In Shimla, we can see that it is losing its white winter. There was just 1 day of snowfall this season so far, and definitely it is all because of the climate change that we are seeing. So Hillary Clinton, she visits Ellora caves and Grineshwar temple. So this becomes important. So the Ellora caves, they are Rashtrakuta eras caves, which has been declared UNESCO World Heritage Site. And she also visited the Grineshwar temple, which is the 12th Jyotirlinga in the country and located close to Ellora caves itself. So you can find out more about them. They are located in the state of Maharashtra in Aurangabad district. So Pakistan's Navy is going to host 50 nations in maritime exercise from 10th of February. And they would be important exercises in regards to piracy, terrorism, narcotics, and arms trafficking and climate change in the region. So these are different challenges. And apart from that, again, the president of Ukraine, he's making a strong appeal for the British fighter jets. So the situation is right now, it is escalating. We are not going to see that this war is going to end soon. But the situation right now, it is escalating at the moment. And again, there are growing tensions between US and China. There is economic crisis even in Sri Lanka. So Syria, it requests European Union assistance. Turkey admits to hiccups in first response to earthquake. So Ankara aims to build houses within a year for those left without a home in the 10 provinces that were affected in Turkey. So RBI's move to hit the demand for affordable housing. This is what realtors believe. So the real estate sector is hoping a Reserve Bank will pause on the rate increase going forward, because whenever there is an increase in the repo rate, the interest rates on the loans also increases. And obviously, when you buy a home, obviously you need a loan. So that would increase the borrowing cost, and it would obviously hit the demand in the realty sector, the real estate sector. So they believe, the realtors, they believe that going ahead, RBI is not going to increase the repo rate at an aggressive rate. So to improve the distribution of coins among the members of the public, RBI is preparing a pilot project on QR code based coin vending machine in collaboration with few leading banks. So the coin vending machine is a cashless coin dispensation machine which would dispense coins against a debit to the customer's bank account using the UPI itself. And this would eliminate the need for the physical tendering of the banknotes and their authentication. So this is one of more additional benefits out of this thing. So that is another thing that is being planned by RBI. So hopefully this is the last hike in the current cycle of the interest rate hikes by the MPC. And this was the sixth rise in a row, and now the repo rate is as 6.5%. So travelers from G20s, they can pay via UPI, and UPI, it has been allowed in several countries globally. So e-rupee is to be piloted by 5 more banks and 9 more cities soon. So that is the central bank's digital currency, or e-rupee, for the retail customers. And it is right now being experimented and tested on pilot basis. So a survey shows concern over the governance at the Adani Group. So the survey was conducted by local circles, received more than 29,000 responses from citizens in 273 districts. So Big Oil doubles the profits in Blockbuster 2022. And government unveils draft dispute settlement schemes. So Finance Ministry released the contours of a draft voluntary settlement scheme to end festering contractual disputes of the government agencies, which it said they are not only holding back the fresh investment, but they're also reducing the ease of doing business with the government. So this is under the Vivad Se Vishwas Scheme 2, which is a one-time settlement scheme and contains the draft pact between the litigating parties to bring finality to the disputes. So from Mint, we'll be understanding regarding the gender budget. So is India's gender budget promise only on papers? So basically, gender budgeting, it is a strategy to ensure that promises on gender equality, which promotes gender equality, and that is promoted in terms of the budget allocations for different sectors. And this was first adopted by India in 2005-6. So, a host of other countries have also adopted such initiatives, but in India and elsewhere, achieving gender equality, it has stayed a major challenge for us. And in the Indian context, the budgetary allocations to schemes benefiting women, they have grown nearly 13% at an annualized rate since its inception, but its share in the overall government spends, that has stayed almost at 5%. So various studies, they have drawn parallels between gender equality and improved economic efficiency. So can India get its act together or not? So key budget announcements regarding women welfare. Firstly, we have a new small savings schemes, which is Mahila Samman Savings Certificate. It is to be made available for 2-year period up to March 2025. And the maximum deposit can be of rupees 2 lakhs for women or girls of 2 years for 2 years at fixed interest rate of 7.5%. And it can be partially withdrawn. So these are the different features of it, and center is going to enable women self-help groups in the rural India to reach the next stage of economic empowerment under the scheme of Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, that is National Rural Livelihoods Mission. And apart from that, while the successive governments, they may promise gender sensitivity, the budget allotted on this front, that has stayed uniform when seen as a share of the total spending. So it has been around at 5%. So what are the schemes that fall under the gender budget? So part A of the schemes, it includes those which have 100% allocation for women. Example, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. Rural Housing Mission, we have Indira Gandhi National Widow Pension Schemes, and rest schemes where 30% allocations are for the women by the government. So that is MG Narega. Then we have Flexible Pool for RCH and the Health System Strengthening, National Health Program, National Urban Health Mission, with Pradhan Mantri Poshan Shakti Nirman, which is PM Poshan Scheme. So this is a global challenge, and achieving gender equality remains a significant challenge globally. And the average level of gender budgeting practices in G20 countries is also low. So the score on the gender budgeting index, G20 countries, when we have a look at the score of gender budgeting, so the dark blue color is for the higher score, and light blue is for a lower score. So India is there in the medium category. Then Canada is there in the higher score. USA is in low category. So you can have a look in case of Russia, it is in low, China is in low, Australia is in medium category. We have South Africa in medium category. So Saudi Arabia, it is in lower category. So this is there. And talking about different states in India, so early adopter states, it includes Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Karnataka, Odisha, West Bengal. And the states which have not adopted, it is there in Ladakh. Then Mizoram, we have Sikkim. So these are there. Even Delhi is there. Sorry, Haryana is also there. So in Financial Express, as we have seen, RBI has increased the repo rate by 25 basis points, and now the repo rate is at 6.5%. And in the upcoming financial year, the RBI, the MPC expects that consumer price inflation will be at 5.3%. And the target range, when we talk about the exact target of inflation, that is 4%, and its target range is between 2% to 6%. So economic growth is estimated at 6.4%. and the rate hike door is still kept open by the MPC. So, under the backdrop and the clashes between US and China, the US president says that would we stand for the most basic of principles? Would we stand for sovereignty? Would we stand for the right of the people to live free from tyranny? And would we stand for the defense of democracy? So this article is talking about the female labor force participation. So in any informal economy, arriving at numbers like for the labor force participation rate, it is very difficult and an enterprise surveys won't work here. So self-employment remains large. And even within the formal sector also, informal contracts are the norm. So we are seeing a growth of informal sector even within the formal sector with increase in contract jobs, with increase in the size of gig economy. And the issue of the female labor force participation rate, it is an old one and it has been exclusively written about also in several times. And so what do we mean by the female like labor force participation rate? So labor force participation rate, it is a percentage of the population that is either it is employed or it is looking for work, but it is unemployed as of now. So two things, people who are employed and people who are looking for work, but they're unemployed, because obviously if they're unemployed, then only they will be looking for work. So firstly, why is female labor force participation rate low in India? So compared not only to the developed countries, but also several countries in East Asia. So there are several questions being raised by this article. Secondly, has the female labor force participation rate declined over time? Thirdly, if it has declined over time, what are the reasons for that? And fourth, do these answers vary depending on the state, rural, urban status, society, and sectors? And lastly, to the extent there is a gender gap in the labor force participation rate, has it been increased over time? So National Sample Survey Organization, on the basis of which respondents answer questions. So this is one of the measures through which we can calculate the labor force participation rate. Apart from that, we have talked about that it is very difficult to calculate it in case of the informal sector. And clubbing apples with oranges, that leads to undercounting, and this is worsened by the lack of recovery questions and a narrow definition of the work. So basically, this is not answering the questions that it has raised. Inflation still is a key word in the RBI's script, and stance is unchanged. RBI keeps its options open. So there's a need for further calibrated monetary policy action to keep the inflation expectations anchored and break the persistence of core inflation. And another thing that was highlighted by the RBI governor was that India is facing inflationary risks arising out of overlapping shocks at the global level, including volatile financial markets. So we are seeing that FPIs, they are withdrawing from the Indian markets at a massive scale. So capital outflows, which is obviously impacting the value of Indian rupee, which is depreciating, and there are geopolitical hostilities, there are sovereign debt distress. So while core inflation, it is declining, so it is not happening at a pace the RBI is expecting. But this does not mean that the tighter monetary policy will continue going ahead, as both headline and core inflation numbers, they are moderating with time. So this is, we can say, a comfortable situation that we are moving towards. And the Indian economy is an extraordinary situation. It is in an extraordinary situation what was not witnessed in the past, and RBI expects the core inflation to reflect those concerns. So however, inflation, it will moderate if the monetary policy remains resolute on its course. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining in, Sarkari. I hope you've understood all the key things, and you'll get the PDF link in the description box. So do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video as much as possible. Thank you so much for joining us.